إلهي لست للفردوس أعلى ولا أقوى على نار الجحيم الله فهب لي التوبة واغفر ذنوبي فإنك غافر الذنب العظيم إلهي لست للفردوس أعلى ولا أقوى على نار الجحيم الله فهب لي توبة واغفر ذنوبي فإن
The term terrorism means premeditated political motivated violence perpetrated against non-combat. The term international terrorist means terrorism involving citizens or the territory of more than one country. The term terrorism group means any group practicing or that has significant subgroups that practice international terrorism.
Terrorism has been described variously as both a tactic and strategic.
A crime and a holy duty, a justified reaction to oppression and an inexcusable abomination.
Terrorism has often been an effective tactic for the weaker side in a conflict.
على نار الجحيم
Until recently, terrorism has been most closely associated with ethnic and minority ethnic struggles for independence and self-determination.
As members of disadvantaged classes became better educated and aware of the relative deprivation suffered by their people, demands for reform were heard,
But rarely heeded, driving people to organize in resistance to their unjust state. The stage was set for the violent confrontation.
The first rule of war is to know your enemy. Terrorists are not a simple enemy to know. They have a myriad of complex motivations as individuals and as a groups.
إلهي لست للفردوس أعلى ولا أقوى على نار الجحيم الله فهب لي توبة واغفر ذنوبي فإنك غافر الذنب العظيم Tuhanku aku tidak layak untuk syurgamu tetapi aku tidak pula sanggup menanggung siksa nerakamu dari itu kurniakanlah ampunan kepadaku ampunkanlah dosaku
Many of these objectives could be pursued without resorting to terrorism against innocent civilians. However, states recognize that their forces and facilities are the primary targets of political violence, and they adopt security and force protection measures that deny insurgents the ability to strike at these priority targets.
One aspect of political violence and terrorism that's really discussed and deep are the economic impact, both negative and positive. The direct costs include to defend against the content terrorism is enormous. Worse still are the incalculable social and human costs, but terrorism has its upside too, creating an economic boom for defense-related industries and private contractors.
The potential to use chemical biological, nuclear, and radiological weapons of mass destruction has created a new level of terror that demands effective solutions. Terrorism has just happened. Terrorism is an advanced stage of a violent political process that begins with inequalities and injustice and moves from frustrated attempts at reform that breed fear and anger to political confrontation that erupts in violence.
ولا أقوى على نار الجحيم الله فهب لي.
There are two types of terrorism, rational and irrational. Rational terrorism has a political goal and a purpose. Irrational terror might be described as mindless violence that serves some dark psychological imbalance and is as difficult to understand as the motives of serial killers.
For example, the current interest in terrorists focus on the violence perpetrated by Islamic fundamentalists. Terrorism has been used as a static for centuries but has become more pervasive since the 1960s. After World War I and II, colonial powers redrew the maps in many parts of the world and gradually reduced their colonies. This led to a rising nationalist movements seeking self-determination or seeking to replace rulers that had been imposed by the colonies.
ذنوبي فإنك غافر الذنب العظيم إلهي لست للفردوس أهلا ولا أقوى على نار الجحيم الله فهب لي توبة